It's time for Comeback Sports with Brandon, the Coach Perry, and Pat, the shot caller Flaherty. Here we go.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Comeback Sports. This is a weekly sports talk show where we give you 10 sports topics happening here in the United States, across the globe. A lot of good stuff on our sports talk show, as always. I am one of your hosts, Pat, the shot caller Flaherty, and as always, I'm joined by my partner, Brandon, the Coach Perry. Brandon, how are we doing this week?
Well, I'm doing good here from the coach's corner, and I'm enjoying my week so far, but good to have you back, Pat, and ready to tear up a great show. And I'll tell you what, the Wizard of Oz is back behind the curtain, ready to do some magic again, Producer Ben.
Yes, as always, Producer Ben Kudo crushing it behind the scenes with everything that's going on. This was a crazy week in football, to say the least, both NFL and some college stuff, and a big high school story that we'll have coming up as well. So a lot going on the gridiron, but we've got some other topics as well, so we're just going to get right into it. But before we do that, folks, you're watching this probably on YouTube, so if you like what you see here in Comeback Sports, make sure, number one, you go to our YouTube channel. Go to YouTube, find Comeback Sports, subscribe to the Comeback Sports YouTube channel. All the content from this show is going to be filtered right to that YouTube channel. You can also follow Brandon and I on Twitter. Our Twitter handles are at the bottom of the screen, so make sure you check those out. You can follow us on Twitter. Check out what we have to say. We always tweet out the links to every show. We'll also probably comment on a lot of different things that are happening in the sports world. And finally, folks, you can always just stream us live on YouTube every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. So make sure you check that out. We also have a call-in number that you'll be checking out throughout the show. You can call in live to the show tonight. You can call in live anytime you want. You can also call in and leave a voicemail throughout the week and ask us a question about what's going on in sports. So we're going to kick things off here with topic number one, NFL news galore over the past couple of days, but especially the biggest news coming here in New England. Brandon, we're both Pats fans. The Pats just released Cam Newton. They named Mac Jones the starting quarterback. I don't think a lot of folks in New England were surprised that Mac Jones is the guy who's going to start the most games this year for the Patriots. But I think the surprise of Cam being released and Mac being the starter from day one, week one, is I think the biggest shocker so far.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't shocked, because I am shocked. And I think a lot of people were when this news came down the line. And I actually had to double check to make sure that it wasn't like a joke parody account that tweeted it out and that it was like the real Adam Schefter. But it was, yeah, definitely one of those things where I was shocked to see it, and no doubt. And I don't know, I guess I was saying, like, and I was telling Producer Ben, it was one of those things where I understand the move, and I think we all knew that Mac was going to be the future of the franchise. I'm just questioning the timing of it, and I just think it's a little premature and it's a little early. But who knows? We shall see. And as I was just telling some people before the show, one of the quickest things that, Mac Jones, Bill Belichick, and the Patriots can do to get rid of this questioning and all of these topics is win some football games. And win some football games immediately within the first 4 or 5 games. If they're doing good, all these questions will just go to the wayside, and people will say, well, hey, man, this was the right decision. But I'll tell you what, if they even go 2-2 or 2-3 through those first 5 games, then there's probably going to be some questions saying, was it the right move? And people are going to question it going in and further into the season. So I think right now the ball is in the hands of, literally Mac Jones and Bill Belichick and the Patriots and Josh McDaniels too. I really want to see what Josh McDaniels is going to do with this rookie quarterback now, starting week one right away. And so here's my questioning on it, is just that I know it's a Miami Dolphins week one. If I'm the Miami Dolphins defensive coordinator, I'm throwing everything and the kitchen sink at Mac Jones to see if he can understand and break down and read an NFL coverage. Here's the thing, in the preseason, he really wasn't going up against starters pretty much probably half the time, right? So we really haven't got to see him against really a full NFL starting defensive unit yet. So I don't know. Week one, I think we're going to get a lot of questions answered. But this is one of the things where, like I said, I am definitely shocked by this. I was one of those guys where I even tweeted it out. So, hey, like he's saying, give us a follow, give us a like, and follow us on Twitter. But I had even tweeted it out being like, I think this is premature. I really feel like we needed to give Cam Newton another 5 games in the preseason to at least see what he could do. I think he had earned that right in the locker room, earned that right taking us through our year last year and being the leader of this team, right? Undeniably the leader of this team. And by all reports from inside the locker room and outside the locker room, great locker room guy, great team leader. Everybody loved him. James White was saying that he thinks he's got a lot of talent, loves him as a player, can't wait to see what he's going to be doing next as a starter for another team. So I just really think that he had earned the right at this point to at least start 5 games and see what he could do. But I think undeniably, Mac Jones played great in the preseason and they're ready to go to him now. So it's just really one of those things where, like I said, if they win some games, the questions will go away immediately. But if they don't, these questions will keep lingering.
Yeah, I think the biggest shock was just Cam getting released. And that depends on, it depends on what happened. I mean, Bill Belichick has been nothing but praising Cam Newton since he came to New England. And like you said, been great in the locker room, been a class act. Has done everything the organization has asked him to do. But when you watched Mac Jones in there, the offense just looked better. And that's the only other way I can explain it, is the offense looked better. It looked smoother. It looked like it was operating like a Patriots offense. There were different players catching the football. The passes to the backs and the flat were crisper. The guys were being led, with a pass rather than having to twist and turn to catch a pass in the backfield from Cam. And Cam didn't necessarily even play bad during training camp. It was just that Mac Jones played better. And I think Mac Jones outplayed Cam Newton. So then the question becomes, Mac Jones will start week 1. Is Cam going to be the backup? And my theory is that Cam went up to Belichick as soon as he heard that he was not going to be the starter and said, if I'm not going to be the starter to start the season, I'd like to be released. And Belichick said, okay, I understand. You've done everything we've asked you to do. This is what you want. This is what we're going to do for you. So I think that's what happened. There's some theories about the fact that he's not vaccinated, so the team is worried about him either getting COVID or spreading COVID to everybody else. I don't think that's the case. I think the only thing related to not being vaccinated is that he did have to sit out those couple of days last week because he didn't go through the proper testing protocols last week when he left the area. And that's not why they were upset at him. It's just that Mac Jones got so many reps and so many opportunities because Cam wasn't there for 3 joint practices against the Giants. And supposedly Mac Jones' best day as a Patriot was that Wednesday joint practice against the Giants. Apparently he was on fire in that practice, and he was so good. And every Patriots beat writer was saying, this is the best we've seen Mac Jones against the Giants starters. And nowadays, all these head coaches and general managers, the joint practices are starting to become more important than the preseason games. So I know Mac was competing against, second stringers for most of the preseason, although he was also playing with second stringers for a lot of the preseason as well, that in the joint practices, especially when he had the most reps, when he was in there against the ones and playing with the ones, he seemed to be really good. And, of course, he made mistakes. He's a rookie. He's going to make mistakes. There's going to be games this year where Mac Jones plays awful because he's a rookie quarterback. But this Patriots team has good defense, despite the fact that Stephon Gilmore is going to be on the PUP list for the first 6 weeks. This team has a really good running game and a really good offensive line. So somebody tweeted out, too, when first-round picks who start right away have been successful, it's been when teams have a good running game and have a really good offensive line that they can really support this quarterback where they don't have to throw all the time. And on first down, they pick up 4 yards, 5 yards. So it makes it easier on second and third down. And I think that's what this Patriots team is going to be. So I think the Patriots coaching staff looked at it like, we're going to start Mac because he's been better during this training camp. The offense is playing better, and we're set up right now to support a rookie quarterback starting in the NFL. Now, if this team was constructed, if this was last year's Patriots team with the same roster, the skill positions players that are on the team last year, the offensive line that was on the team last year, the defense that was on this team last year, I still think Cam Newton would be here, and I think Cam Newton would be starting week 1. But the Patriots are set up to support a rookie starting quarterback. They really like him. And they said, why are we going to waste time, starting Cam for 4 or 5 games? I was the same with you, Brandon, where I thought he would start the first 4, and then week 5 is when Mac Jones would start. I was right there with you. But the Patriots think that Mac's that much better, and they're set up and ready to go for him to take over. And that's exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, no, you bring up a lot of great points there. I think with this season, especially with it being a rookie quarterback, you've got to look at the season in segments because he's going to develop throughout the season. So you've got to break it up in 5 games, honestly, because after 5 games in the NFL, he's going to have learned a lot. And then after another 5 games, he's going to have learned even more. So you really have to break this season up in segments for him. But you brought up a great point with his leadership really in that joint practice with the Giants. So there was a huge fight between the offensive lines, and then, they were sent around. All coaches know, hey, do a lap, man. We're sick of this BS. Take a lap. So both teams had to take a lap. The quarterbacks were told they didn't have to go, but the leadership of, both quarterbacks, they went out there, and Mac Jones especially was the guy leading the Patriots around on that lap, a punishment lap per se that he didn't even have to go through. And he still had the leadership to take it on and do it. So I think that was huge. But another thing for Cam Newton is sadly was, the upside for Cam Newton was his legs. But time waits for no man. And clearly he doesn't have his legs anymore to be able to run and move the pocket, because that was really his big upside compared to Mac Jones. And he hasn't been able to show that over the last few years. And so I think that's really one of the things that's a downside now, that you're like, we might as well go with the rookie because he's giving us probably better pocket presence and better pocket, QB play. And he still can't move the pocket either. So, might as well go with this young guy, the franchise guy, and go forward with it. But quickly, I just got to say, I don't want to hear this BS about let's just trust Belichick and believe in Belichick at this point, because I'm wearing this guy's jersey for a reason tonight. Tom Brady, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Bill Belichick was the same guy that told you Tom Brady was done, had no more years left, and his career was over. Tom Brady is still playing right now, won another Super Bowl, and is the odds-on favorite to win the Super Bowl this year. So I just don't want to hear BS about Belichick and trusting Belichick with everything. But we will see whether it's not this decision was right. And I will say, like I said, you got to take this season in segments, but let's see after the first 5 games what their record is. And like I said, if they're winning, these questions will quickly disappear. But if they're losing or 500, these questions are going to linger throughout the season. But let's move on. Let's move on to topic number 2 tonight. Another great topic, and it's the Eagles QB decision. And it just came out earlier this morning. I was just talking about it with producer Ben, that the Eagles head coach did decide that he was going to go with Jalen Hurts and name Jalen Hurts as the starting quarterback. So we're going to say, hey, is that the right decision at this point for this Philadelphia Eagles team? What do you think, Pat?
I think this is absolutely the right decision. Number one, you're the Eagles. Minshew just got there, so you're gonna go into week 1 with a guy who's been there for 3 weeks with this team. That's really tough. Number 2, you're Philly. They're going to say they want to make the playoffs. They're not going to make the playoffs. They don't have the roster to make the playoffs. You have a young receiver in Devontae Smith, who you drafted really high. You have a young team around Jalen Hurts. And number 2, you got to figure out if this guy could be the guy. Give him a full season. Give Jalen Hurts, he played a couple games last year, played pretty well in some, not so well in others. So let this guy be the starter for a year and see if he's the guy. If he's not, then you have to go out and get the next guy. So you can draft the next guy next year or sign a free agent next year, because neither of those things are going to happen right now midseason. So the toughest part about the NFL with quarterbacks sometimes is, like, look at the Giants. I don't think Daniel Jones is the guy. Or look at the Bears, who were, putzing around with Mitch Trubisky for how long, because they felt like they had to keep playing him because those 2 guys were high first-round picks.
Yep.
And they didn't want to be embarrassed by the fact that they just picked a guy in the top 10 who now is not a good starting quarterback. I don't think either of those guys are good starting quarterbacks. And the longer you wait, the longer it takes to get the next guy. So if you're Philly, you got a guy on your roster who you think might be the next starting quarterback who could be a good player in this league, and Jalen Hurts. See what he's got this year, right? And then you got Gardner Minshew, who, if Hurts just is terrible by, mid-season, you can easily bring Minshew in. He's used to being a backup quarterback. He's used to coming in relief. He's used to being that guy who has to sit with a clipboard for however many weeks and then come in and be the starter and lead a team. You're set up perfectly to have Hurts be the guy that you're trying out, and then if he doesn't work out, you can have Minshew come in just to hold the team together, hold the season together so it doesn't completely collapse throughout the season.
No, I agree with you. And, hey, we were just talking about Cam Newton, and I got to think, you were just talking about these teams that are undecided at quarterbacks. There's still a lot of teams that need a quarterback, so we're going to see where Cam Newton goes. I still think he is going to be a starting quarterback on another team, and we'll find out, I would think, within the next few weeks if that's going to be true. But in this case, I think Jalen Hurts is like a young Cam Newton, somebody that can move the pocket, use his legs, get outside, throw on the run, and he's a big quarterback too. He can run and take some hits. And it's like, just quickly, let's go back. And I know people have talked about it, but let's go back to the QB room at Alabama that year with Mac Jones, Jalen Hurts, and Tua Tagovailoa all on the same team. And so it just proves how good Alabama is at recruiting and getting great quarterbacks and putting them out year after year. And it looks like all three of them right now are going to be starting quarterbacks in the NFL this year. So it's just amazing. But I've really got to go with Jalen Hurts here. I think it's an easy choice here. I've really got to say, and this isn't a big hit on Gardner Minshew. I think he's played well. I think he's played well in his NFL opportunities. But I think at times people are talking more about his mustache and his mullet and the way he carries himself off the field and, his interviews and stuff. But at some point, you've got to put that product on the field as well. He does a great job of his branding himself off the field and his personal brand. But at some point, you've got to deliver on the field here. This is professional sports. And I think at times he's just been an average NFL quarterback. So I just think the upside here is with Jalen Hurts clearly as being the better quarterback, giving you more opportunity to go out and win now if you're Philadelphia. And like you said, do they have a chance to make the playoffs? Probably not, okay? Probably not with either quarterback. So like you said, let's see what we got with Jalen Hurts, see if he is going to be the guy of the future here and see what we really got in him. And like I said, I think this is a guy that has young Cam Newton-like, capabilities with being able to throw on the run, move the pocket, get outside of the pocket and escape pressure and be able to do things with his legs that a lot of NFL quarterbacks can't do right now. And specifically that Gardner Minshew can't do. So I just think even as a coach, I've always said this, give me a mobile quarterback any day of the week over a standard pocket passer, because you can just do so many more things with a mobile quarterback in an offense. And there's just so many more capabilities as a play caller. And I just think that's exactly what the Eagles are thinking here right now. And clearly that's what they thought when they named him the starting quarterback this morning. But I do think it's the right decision. And I think he can have a good season. But I think it's also one of those things like we were just talking about with Mac Jones. I think you got to take his season in segments and see how he develops and how he progresses and then really make a decision if he's going to be your quarterback of the future.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense. And like you were saying before about Minshew, it's almost like some people don't like the idea of Minshew or the mystique of Gardner Minshew rather than the actual quarterback and what he produces on the field. Wouldn't hate him in New England if he was the backup quarterback, though. I think he's a very good backup quarterback, not necessarily the guy that you go into the season to start with. And I think that's what the Eagles think right now, too. We're going to move on to topic number 3. Baltimore Ravens dealt a huge blow last week, or over the weekend, rather, when J.K. Dobbins, their starting running back, one of their top draft picks last year, and had a good rookie season, tore his ACL in their final preseason game. Brandon, how does this affect the Baltimore Ravens heading into the season?
A big hit. This is a big hit for the team. Dobbins is a really good back that was really just defining himself in the NFL, man. I think he was really just starting to break out. You're really just starting to see the best of J.K. Dobbins over this last year. And I think a lot of people were really looking forward to what he could be doing this year for the Ravens and their strong run game. Honestly, they have the best run game in the NFL statistically. And so it's just really one of those things where when you got him and Lamar Jackson, there's so many capabilities. I just came off saying it in the last segment that when you have a mobile quarterback, it gives you so many options and so many different play calls that you can go with. But hey, when you have a tandem of a great running back, you have an amazing backfield. And guess what? Linebackers do not know what's going to happen. They don't know if they have to read the quarterback, the running back, the fullback. Is it going to be a pass? Is it going to be a screen? Is it going to be a toss play? So it just puts the defense in a position where they really don't know what's going on. And as a coach, you always want to keep the defense on their toes and off balance And I think, that's exactly what the Ravens have been doing over the last season with their run game between their quarterback and their running back. So this is undeniably a big hit to this Ravens team and to their run game. So I really want to see what they're going to be doing going forward to shore it up, because this is clearly a big injury where he's out for the whole season. So you have to think about what you're going to do with your roster. Are you going to just bump up somebody from maybe your practice squad, or are you going to go out and get somebody on the free agent, or are you going to go out and make a trade at this point? So there's still a lot of options that the Ravens have, and we're going to see what they do going forward. And hey, they might just trust the next guy up. And we all know in football, that is really one of the main, thoughts, is trust the next guy up and have that next guy ready for his opportunity. And John Harbaugh is a great coach, and I have undeniably no doubt that he'll have the plan ready to go. But I'll tell you what, this week he's been taking a lot of heat for playing Dobbins so much in that game. And people are asking him questions being like, did you even need to play him in that game? But Harbaugh's been coming back saying that was always part of the plan, was to get him so many reps in the preseason, including in that game where he got hurt. And we've all just got to remember, this is a full contact sport. It's a warrior sport. It's probably the most violent sport there is besides boxing or MMA. So, injuries happen. This is part of the game. Unfortunately for J.K. Dobbins, he's going to have to come back and rehab this injury. But I do think this is a big hit for the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, I do too. The Ravens have always seemed to be able to run the ball. They just kind of had that kind of team. I think when you play in the AFC North, you have to be able to run the ball against Pittsburgh and Cleveland and any other team that comes through there. But this is rough for the Ravens. They do have Gus Edwards, who I believe is going to get the bulk of the carries now that Dobbins is out for the year. Good player. I don't know if I don't think he's at the level that J.K. Dobbins is. And like you mentioned, it seemed like J.K. Dobbins was really kind of setting himself up to become one of the elite running backs in the NFL. He was obviously really good in college. That's why he got drafted so high. Looked good last year. He was part of that tandem with Mark Ingram. They had Ingram, they had Dobbins, and then they had Lamar Jackson. And you had three guys in the backfield who you really had to worry about. And then on top of that, you had a couple of tight ends that were good that could go out and catch footballs, and you kind of didn't know, whatever base personnel they were coming out of, they could run a lot of different stuff, whether it was run, pass, and they had a lot of different options out of that base personnel with the two tight end set. So I don't think they'll go away from that this year, but you just wonder how they're going to use their running backs, and maybe, some of their receivers will get involved even more this upcoming season. They've been kind of waiting for Marquise Brown to be a guy that really explodes. I just don't think their passing attack has so far allowed him to do that. But they're certainly going to miss Dobbins. They go through a lot of running backs. They always have. So when you lose a really good one, that's certainly going to hurt you. I still think the Ravens are going to be very good. They're certainly going to still be able to run the ball. Maybe Lamar Jackson runs the ball even more. And then that's maybe a question you ask. If you run it more with Jackson, is he then more susceptible to injury because he's a quarterback and he's running the football more? Is that a consequence of not having Dobbins? So, I'm sure they'll add another back throughout the season. Players are getting cut right now and released and then signed to practice squads and things. And then injuries happen throughout the year. So then guys get moved around. I think they'll probably pick up somebody else too to go along with Gus Edwards and whoever else they have on that team. But definitely a big loss for the Ravens.
Yeah, I think undeniably a big hit for this Ravens team. And like you said, they bring up that base set of two tight ends. And Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson have got a great relationship right now with passing the ball. So just really one of those things where I think when Lamar looks his way, it's a guarantee. But I think that does help, like you said, with even running the ball and keeping the defense off balance, right? Knowing that we've got a great run game, but we've got these tight ends you got to watch out for. So I do wonder what they're going to do to basically replace that. I say you cannot run Lamar Jackson more. I repeat that. You cannot run Lamar Jackson more because, like you said, you do not want to take an injury long-term with your franchise quarterback of the next 10 years, hopefully, right? So you want to be able to look to protect this guy. You want to just run him about the same that you did last year. So you've got to look to get some production from another player here. And you brought him up, honestly. And, I'm an offensive coach. I'm an offensive-minded coach. And if I'm the Ravens, offensive coordinator, I'm thinking, you know what? I can't get the ball to Marquise Brown down the field. Well, maybe I need to line him up in the backfield, or maybe I need to line him up at H-back, or maybe I need to throw some more screens to him, or even, run, a couple of, sprint draw passes out or something to get this guy the ball. But line him up in the backfield if you need to, and maybe you can get some replacement out of him too. We've seen it in the past with wide receivers going into the backfield and taking carries as well. And with a guy that's the dynamic like Marquise Brown, I think that would be a great plan. But hey, let's move on tonight to topic number 4. The Jameis Winston named as the Saints starter. But hey, before we dive into this topic, if you're new to the show here, give us a subscribe and give us a like to Comeback Sports here so we can keep delivering this weekly content for you. And we're going to keep hammering it out week after week. So, hey, give us a subscribe, give us a like, call into the show, and give us a follow on Twitter as well. But, hey, also go back to last week. Me and producer Ben covered a topic about Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill and who would you pick as the starting quarterback. And even before, me and you, Pat, have talked about this, I believe, months ago on who the decision they were going to have to make once Drew Brees retired. So this was the decision that, they finally came to. Sean Payton's a great coach, and I knew he was going to make this decision. But he did decide and announce that Jameis Winston is going to be the starter for the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, it's totally the right decision. Taysom Hill had that one preseason game where he just looked terrible. And it's just, you have a guy that comes in, in the past when Drew Brees was the starter, Taysom Hill would come in for a couple of plays, and it was a gadget play because you didn't know if he was going to throw the ball, run the ball, line up as a tight end, as a receiver, in the slot, whatever. But then once you start featuring your whole offense around that, then guys like that get exposed when they have to play quarterback the entire time. We actually even saw it when the Dolphins had, I can't remember that running game that they used to have where Ronnie Brown was the
Wildcat.
The Wildcat. Why could I remember the Wildcat? Because they killed the Patriots with it in that week too.
Yeah.
But after a while, teams just figure it out. They figure out how to defend that because it's the NFL. They have a million minutes of tape. They have all these assistant coaches and coaches that are checking it out and figuring out how to stop it. The players in the NFL are too fast, too strong to do stuff like that. So it just wasn't going to work out. Jameis Winston's a better player. This was an easy decision, I think, for Sean Payton. It was almost like Payton was, just trying to figure out if Hill could do it during the preseason. And then he saw that Hill was so bad, he was like, okay, that just made it an easy decision for me, which it should have been. So this makes total sense to me. Now you're questioning, why did you give all that money to Taysom Hill? I mean, because he's not a great receiver. He's not a great running back, and he's certainly not a great quarterback. So I know he's a slash player, but it's not like you got a guy like Julian Edelman who played quarterback in college and then developed into a really good receiver, if not great receiver. I think a great receiver, or an Antoine Randall L or somebody like that who developed into a really good player at their particular position. Taysom Hill is kind of a jack of all trades, but a master of none. So why'd you give him all that money? Is now the biggest question because clearly Jameis Winston is the better option at quarterback.
Classic bringing up Antoine Randall L. Like, give this man an award for that because that was great. I am impressed. I love that. But you're right. Antoine Randall L was far better than this man, Taysom Hill. So I think Taysom Hill is a gimmick player. I've been saying it all along. I've been saying it on this show. I've been tweeting it out for years. He's a gimmick player. He's not really even a football player. And I think you called it. I think he's been exposed at this point, finally, to the people that didn't already know it, like myself, that this guy was never going to be a starting NFL quarterback. But I think you're right, using that key word of being exposed. And let's go back to even what you talked about with, NFL defenses being able to adjust and NFL defensive coordinators being able to adjust. And you bring up the Wildcat, and then, a lot of people bring up being like, well, why isn't the option full-time in the NFL or the read option? And it's because, guess what? Like you said, these NFL teams can adapt, and it's all the best players in the world. They're fast as heck. They're smart as heck. They can adapt and read. They're disciplined. They stick to the plan. So after a while, a read option or even a regular triple option or something like that is going to get shut down because every player is going to stick to their assignment and play assignment football. And that's what you have to do to stop things like Wildcat and option and read option. So I think you bring that up, and that's a great point, that it's just something you can't make as your main offense. It's just got to be a gimmick that you roll in every now and then. And that's what Taysom Hill is, a gimmick that you roll in every now and then. So there was no need to give him all that money. I want to even go back. Producer Ben, I don't know, you'd have to go way back in my tweets, but I'm pretty sure I when he got all that money, I was questioning it, being like, what? Are you serious? Like, Why are you giving this guy all this money when he's clearly a backup, if not a third-string quarterback? So, yeah, this was clearly the right decision, going with Jameis Winston, a guy that's thrown for 5,000 yards in a season, a guy that can light it up, a gunslinger. Sure, he does make mistakes, but if I'm going to have a starting quarterback, I'm going with experience. I'm going with a guy that can get it done. I'm going with a true leader like Jameis Winston, a guy that's won a national championship at Florida State, great locker room guy, great leader by all reports, right? So I just think that was an easy decision for Sean Payton in the long run. And I think, I don't even know why this went on for so many weeks. We were saying for it, but I think just because they gave Taysom Hill all that money that it became a show of being like, is he going to be the starter because he's making so much money, or is it going to be Jameis Winston? But undeniably, Jameis Winston was the man here. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do with hopefully Michael Thomas if Michael Thomas decides he wants to come back and play.
Very good point at the very end there too, Brandon, because if you're Michael Thomas, do you want to play with Jameis Winston as your quarterback or Taysom Hill? I mean, Jameis Winston is going to be the one that wants to get the ball downfield. That's just how he likes to play. It's how he played in Tampa. So he's going to be the one to throw it deep to Michael Thomas, not Taysom Hill. So This is another way for the Saints to kind of reach out to Michael Thomas, say, hey, we want to get you the ball. You're an outside receiver. You like to get downfield. We've got a quarterback who wants to do that. I know he's not Drew Brees, but Drew, over the last couple of years, his arm kind of wasn't the same. We got another big, strong guy now who can fire the ball downfield. He can get the ball to you. Why don't you come back? This offense is going to be, featured for a player like you. You could excel with the way we're going to play with Jameis Winston. And that's another reason you put Jameis Winston in there. Because if I'm Michael Thomas, I wouldn't want to play with Taysom Hill because there were teams loading the box against him in preseason. He couldn't get it downfield. So, I think this makes total sense for the Saints. And again, to try to maybe get Michael Thomas back into the fold and back on the same page as everybody else with the Saints. So this makes total sense for Jameis to be the starting quarterback. We're going to move on to topic number 5 now, and that's going to be Shohei Ohtani making it to the 40-20 mark this season. This is the first time in Angels history that a player has hit 40 home runs and stolen 20 bases in a season for the Anaheim Angels. Huge mark here for this guy who just continues to pile up these crazy numbers, both on the pitching from the rubber, at the plate, and now stealing bases. Last night he stole home, which just shows you how fast he is. So, Brandon, this has got to be an unbelievable thing for this guy to get to this point of this 40-20 mark with the Anaheim Angels.
Yeah, I mean, it's super Shohei. It's Showtime Shohei, man. This guy does something every week for us to talk about. He's making history every week, and he just did it again. He just did it again by, being the first Angels player to hit 40 home runs and steal 20 bases in the same season. I mean, that's pretty amazing when you've talked about, you got Mike Trout on that same roster. Mike Trout's been on that roster many a times, right? So it just tells you how Mike Trout can't steal bases, right? He's a great player, right? One of the best players in Major League Baseball. Anaheim Angels have had some great players on their roster over this lifetime of their organization, and nobody's done this. So for Shohei Ohtani to do this, it just proves even more why, hey, give this guy the Major League Baseball MVP right now, because he is the best player in Major League Baseball. He's bringing all the eyes back. We love him on this show. We love covering him and talking about him. The young Japanese superstar Shohei Ohtani is the man. And like you said, you brought it up last night with that double steal. Okay, man, the pitcher he goes to throw it to second. He really should have just held on, because here comes the freight train, Shohei Ohtani coming down the third baseline, stealing home and making them look like an idiot with a double steal. But I think I have to quickly bring up being we talked about how Shohei is built and he is strong right now, that if that throw would have got there earlier, do you think Shohei would have just steamrolled him and rolled him up and got that base anyway? And I think he would have. Because I think Shohei's the man. And I think it's one of those things where I think the guy would have been afraid that he was going to get steamrolled, because Shohei is such a big presence right now and in the batter's box, in the game. And like I said, he is built like a football player out there playing baseball. But, man, I love this guy. I love watching him. And he, like I said, I've been very vocal on this show, being I'm not really a fan of baseball, but he's bringing me back. He's bringing me back kind of like a Ken Griffey Jr. did, where just undeniably you just had to enjoy and watch the guy and enjoy what he was doing. And Super Shohei is that guy right now, breaking history just day after day.
Yeah, I mean, he's become appointment viewing this year, where if you hear that he's up at bat, you want to watch. Or if you hear he's on the bases, you want to watch. And now if he's pitching, you want to watch too. He's just fun to watch. I remember watching him in the home run derby. He didn't even, do that great. He lost in the first round, but it was just fun to watch. He was hitting bombs. The guy's 6'4", like 240. The guy's stealing bases. He got, I think, 21 steals now that he had that steal last night when he stole home. I mean, I remember when Jacoby Ellsbury was on the Red Sox and he stole home. I think that was the last time somebody on the Red Sox stole home, and that was a super exciting play to see happen. So for Shohei Ohtani, who's this power hitter who can steal bases, who's such a good pitcher, we've never seen anything like this before. This is like completely new territory. Kind of like any time in a sport where you see a guy who's just, or a female who's, just out of this world, like beyond your expectations for what they can do in their particular sport. That's what you're seeing from Shohei Ohtani. It hasn't really been since Babe Ruth has somebody with this kind of power and then this good of a pitcher play in Major League Baseball. And the worst part about it is the Angels are a game under 500. They're not going to make the playoffs. They're not going to make the wild card unless they don't lose a game for the rest of the season. And so, you're not going to see them in the postseason most likely. And there's not going to be like a pennant chase or a wild card game chase towards the end of the year. And that's going to be the tough part, is that how many baseball fans are going to continue to pay attention when this guy's team is just not in it and doesn't have a chance at the postseason, because he's so fun to watch. And I wish he was on more national TV games. And, it seems like you got to have the MLB package to find him anywhere, unless it's, the All-Star game or something like that. So hopefully the networks can get the Angels on a little bit more down the stretch of the season, because this guy, like I said, is appointment viewing. Baseball needs somebody who you say, okay, tonight this team is playing. I want to watch this guy up at bat, or I want to watch this guy pitch. And that's going to get more fans involved and more fans interested, because Shohei Ohtani is just so much fun to watch. We've never seen something like this before.
No, man, I've gotten heat on this show before saying, there's not many like him, but it's true. And when I made that comment, it was being like, there's really nobody like this guy. And only incomparable was Babe Ruth, but I honestly don't think Babe Ruth was stealing bases with that beer gut that he was sporting. So it's just really one of those things where I think Ohtani is clearly a much better player than even Babe Ruth was at this point. People might not like hearing that, but it's the truth, okay? And it's just, Shohei Ohtani is a superstar right now. He's getting all of this credit. He deserves it, and he should be getting more credit, honestly. And we're going to keep giving it to him because he's the man right now. We've talked about, can he get to 50 home runs and a certain amount of strikeouts? But now we've got to start talking about how many bases can he steal by the end of the season. So I think it's really one of those things where, man, he's going to have 50 home runs, 30 stolen bases, and a ton of strikeouts. And that is just unheard of. So like I said, man, we don't even need to. I think we're counting down the votes for MVP is just going to be a show going down to the end of the season. And guess what? His name is Show. So just give it to him right now. Give it to Shohei Ohtani. I know we can't do that. We've got to go through it. But guess what? Everybody's vote is for Shohei Ohtani to be a Major League Baseball MVP. And he's just must-watch TV right now when it comes to baseball. And we're going to be covering him going forward on the show. But let's move on. Let's move on to topic number 6 tonight. And that is, more baseball. And that's the Mets booing their fans back and giving those New York fans a little taste of their own medicine. And so what do you think about this with, a Major League Baseball team or a professional sports team in general just giving a little flack back to their fans?
I'm kind of torn on this because on the one hand, fans have gotten to the point where they just think they can do whatever they want if they pay for a ticket, which is wrong. I mean, we dealt with this a few months ago when the idiot in Boston threw a bottle at Kyrie Irving. And, there was actually a documentary that just came out on Netflix about the Malice at the Palace with Ron Artest going into the stands. And that's the most extreme version of that we've seen in a long time. But, you can't just do whatever you want when you go into a stadium. So fans, I mean, we've all been there. We've all been at, Fenway Park here in New England, Gillette Stadium. I've been a fan, and there's times where I'm like, why are you booing this person so much or whatever? But I still think it's, I don't think there's anything wrong with booing during a game if the team's not playing well. But there's a difference between booing and just attacking a person as a, attacking a player as a person, or attacking their manhood, I guess you could say, or, womanhood, whoever's out there. But at the same time, I want to say to some of these Mets players, you guys signed big deals to be in New York. It's New York. Just like when you sign with Boston, just like when you sign with Philly, just like when you sign with Chicago, those are places where fans love their teams, okay? And they're going to be emotional about games. That's just how it is. If you don't want to, have fans be emotional, you can go play for the Marlins when nobody shows up to the games. You can go play for the Rays where they're really good every year and they're kicking everybody's butt in the AL East, but there was 7,000 fans at the stadium yesterday when I'm playing the Red Sox,
Yeah.
So it's like, I know we want a happy medium, which I totally get. A couple of Mets came out and said, we shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't be booing our fans. They came to see us, that sort of thing. So I think this is going to calm down a little bit. But like I said, I'm kind of torn because I don't think this is a big deal. Like, if the players want to put their thumbs down and boo the fans, go ahead. No skin off my back. So I don't think it's that big a deal. But, again, they signed up to play in New York. So when you do sign up to play in a place like New York, you got to kind of deal with the flack that comes with that and the pressure that comes with that, whether it's in the media, in the stands, wherever. There's certainly a point where fans go overboard, and that's not okay. But just booing and that sort of thing, you got to put up with it when you're in New York.
No, yeah, you bring up a great point. And first, can I say that I know it's not the Yankees, but it is a New York team, so I'm thoroughly enjoying this.
Yes.
And just watching any of this happen when it comes to any New York team, right? So I'm definitely enjoying this. But I guess I see both sides here. With I see the players being like, hey, we're sick of it at this point. You're supposed to be here supporting us and building us up. But then I see the fans thing too. And you bring up a great thing where, fans have gotten rowdy and overstepped the line a lot recently. But I don't think this is that case at all. I think, like you said, booing is common, especially in cities, the ones that you brought up, Boston, Philly, New York, right? There's some more that you're just expecting it if you don't do good as a professional player. So I just think, like you said, this is one of those things when you are a professional athlete, you've got to expect it and you've got to just keep rolling with the punches and be like, hey, the checks are rolling in and I don't care if the boos are rolling in because the checks are rolling in. So go out there and do your job. But I do think it's a small story here, but I think we just wanted it because it's like you said, it's entertaining because it's these New York fans and the New York players, even though it's not the dreaded Yankees, and I've got to say, I like the Mets fans a lot, to be honest. I've gone to a game at Mets Stadium, Shea Stadium, and it was a great time, a great showing there. The whole time, it's right near the airport, so there's literally jets and 747s flying over the game the whole time. So even if the games are like boring, you get to watch jet take off like 20 feet above you. It's pretty amazing. So great dynamic of a stadium there at Shea Stadium. So I gotta, like I said, I like these fans at the Mets and Shea Stadium, especially compared to the dreaded Yankees fans. But yeah, I think this is a thing where I think both sides have a right here. But I think you brought up a great point where I think this is going to die down pretty fast because I think even the front office is going to be like, you can't be booing the fans, man. They're the ones that pay, your salary, my salary, everybody else's salary. So we need these fans to keep coming and buying your jersey there, Baez. So it's just really one of those things where I think this will stop from the players really soon. And it's not a big deal at all.
Yeah, I think this story is going to get old. We've seen throughout sports, like I mentioned before, that some fans have gone overboard and some players have come back and said, you got to protect us, in a better manner. This seems more just like fans' reaction to bad play, which to me is okay. So, there's sort of this back and forth. But again, the players are human, and at some point there's going to be a breaking point. So, like you said, I think this story is going to die down pretty quickly. But like you mentioned, it's funny to see New York teams go through this because we appreciate that here up in Boston. I'm going to move on to topic number 7. We're going to skip over to F1 racing. And, of course, anybody who's a fan of F1 knows about the Belgian Grand Prix that happened over the weekend, raining like crazy. They did, 3 laps, Brandon, then they called the race. And I think the biggest question right now is, should this have even counted as a race? Should they have even counted points at this particular Grand Prix?
Yeah, man. I mean, well, first, hey, if you're new to this show, give us a subscribe, give us a like, especially you F1 fans. You've been driving our subs recently. We're going to keep delivering you great F1 content here from the States. Yes. And we've got a lot of more coming here with this exciting season. So, hey, give us a subscribe, give us a like here. And just quickly, a little bonus topic, and I'm sad about it. Kimi Räikkönen announced his retirement today from F1 at the end of the season. I'm a huge Kimi Räikkönen fan. We've loved him. He's made the sport just amazing over these last 2 decades. So I think the sport's really going to miss Kimi Räikkönen. So we love you, Kimi, on this show. And we're looking forward to watching these last, 6 or 7 races that we've got here with Kimi Räikkönen in F1. But yeah, I think this is a big story, to be honest, for F1. And I think they've got some covering up to do and some fixing to do personally, because I think it was a really disappointing weekend as an F1 fan. And I think that's what you're hearing from pretty much every fan. So, they did 4 laps under the safety car, behind the safety car, 2 laps officially, and then they classified it as a race and gave away half points. And that's, going by the old rules and the current regulations, which are out of bounds at this point. They're old, they're outdated. And I think that's what most F1 fans were saying. And not only were the F1 fans saying that, the drivers themselves were saying that was no race. There was no race. It shouldn't be classified as a race. And here were the drivers that specifically came out and said that: Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, Pierre Gasly, and then the team principal, Zach Brown of McLaren, was very vocal, saying that wasn't a race and that FIA has to go back and look at the regulations and change that going forward, because what they delivered as a product was poor and the fans did not enjoy that, and that wasn't a race. So I don't want to hear that. And even hearing people saying, Max won. Max didn't win jack diddly squat. Max didn't win anything. He did laps behind the safety car. And for you Dutch fans or for you Red Bull fans saying, well, he's got to get rewarded for his effort on Saturday and his qualifying effort. Well, guess what? My question to you would be, do they award points for qualifying? No, they do not. Do they award points for racing? Yes, they do. So you can't say that he deserved those points from his qualifying effort. Everybody knows you win the race on Sunday, you get points on Sunday, you get points in the race, not during qualifying. So it's just really one of those things where the FIA has to go back and look at this. And a lot of people have been vocal about it, including myself, a lot of the drivers, team principals, and fans all around the world, saying that wasn't a race. That was a disgrace that you even called it a race. Give the fans their money back. And I appreciate Lewis Hamilton, especially for coming out and saying that all the fans at the track deserve their money back, because that wasn't a race. We gave them 0 entertainment factor. And they stood out in the rain, some of them for 5, 6, 7 hours, or even a whole weekend of rain, because it rained on Saturday for qualifying as well. So I think this is one of these things where the FIA has to go back, and I've got to go with Karun Chandok from the F1 paddock, saying that I think they need to look at this regulation and change it to that it's got to be at least 25% of the laps ran without a safety car. So just flat out racing, 25% of the laps ran in a normal race conditions, and then you can classify it as a race and give out half points or full points at that point. But if you don't run 25% of the laps under race conditions, then it's just got to be a race that is unfortunately canned because of safety conditions. And I completely understand why they weren't racing, because there was 0 visibility. Every driver was reporting back that there was 0 visibility and that the conditions were undrivable. Specifically, Antonio Giovinazzi saying these conditions are undrivable. I cannot drive in these conditions. So I just think they did make the right call as far as not running the race for the driver's safety and the rain conditions. But I think when you classify it as a race and give away half points, that's where they've crossed the line and they've made the wrong move. It should have just been a canceled race. There should have been no points awarded, and we should have just been moving on to the next round at Zandvoort.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, Red Bull was saying that Lewis Hamilton was driving, unsafe, how many races ago, and now they're okay with a a race in the rain, which doesn't make any sense to me because it's clearly not safe when you have that low visibility, and never mind what happens to the tires on a wet track and so forth. It just seems like, and maybe I'm just being naive, but it seems like F1 isn't prepared for like a rain delay or a rain postponement. I'm going to ask a stupid question, Brandon, and feel free to jump in. Why couldn't they just postpone the race and have it on Monday? You know, I know that there's a full week in Belgium, and they have a schedule with everything, and then they got to move everything once they leave. F1's got to break everything down and everything like that. They can't have it there one more day. They can't have the race the next day. I know it's harder for fans to get to a race on, say, Monday, but it's like a postponed baseball game. You know, they have a doubleheader. I know you can have a doubleheader in F1 racing, but why can't you just do it the next day? You have 2 weeks until your next race. So to me, I just don't understand why they can't just have it the following day. And like you said, you know, if it is 25% or however many laps that they want to decide counts as a race, just kind of like in baseball, after 5.5 innings, it counts as a game. So, you know, have that distinction and have that benchmark to count it as a race. And then go from there. So those are the kind of the two questions I have as a F1 fan who's still kind of learning the sport. You know, why can't you just have it the next day? And yeah, why isn't there a distinction between, you know, how many laps you got to get in as a normal race before you can count it as a race? Because it just seems like, you know, that rule that you were just talking about, that old rule where they have the safety car there. I'm sure, you know, 30, 40 years ago in F1, it's a lot harder to have a race the next day because things are just more, you know, cumbersome, and travels harder, and, you know, the schedule's probably tighter because it takes longer. You know, this is 2021. We're able to move things easier and move things around and schedule things better because of technology. I don't understand why you can't do that in F1 right now.
Yeah, no, you bring up great questions, and I'll answer them both here. And it's you know, really, we talked about the rules are outdated, and the FIA has to change that regulation of what's classified as a race and have a clear distinction of, like you said, how many laps or a percentage of laps that we're going to run before we can actually classify it as a race. So the FIA has to change those rules going into next season, and I believe all the teams are going to be willing to do it, led by McLaren, with Zach Brown there being very vocal about it. And I appreciate you, Zach Brown. I really do appreciate you stepping up for the fans and saying that that wasn't a race and we gave them a poor product, and we've got to look at what we're doing going forward. So I think they will do that, and they will change it going forward. Hopefully we won't see anything like this ever again. And on top of that, I'm hoping that F1 steps up and refunds all the money to all the fans that were at the track, because they deserve it for standing out in the rain and not receiving the product that they paid for. But to answer your question, and a lot of people were asking that exact same question of why can't we just roll the race over to Monday? Well, I think there was a lot of things playing into that. First was the weather again, was the bad weather report into Monday. They said this rain was going to continue into Monday. It might lighten up, but it still was kind of like a foggy, not looking good Monday weather-wise at Belgium. So that played into it. And then we're in a triple header right now. So you don't have 2 weeks off. You just have this 1 week off. They're getting back to racing on this Friday in the Netherlands at Zandvoort, which, I mean, fans were pulling it up, and it's only about a 4-hour drive from Spa, Belgium to Zandvoort. So they were still questioning, being like, why still can't we roll it over to maybe Monday and still try to have some sort of a race before you pack it up? And F1 just kept coming back with the logistics of packing up all the teams and moving all their, you know, all the teams and all their products and the cars and everything, those 4 hours to the coastline of the Netherlands and getting them to Zandvoort on time to be able to practice on Friday. So I think it's really one of those things where I think that's BS, though, personally. I'm with you. I think they should have tried at least to roll it over to Monday and given the fans a chance to see a race. And then at that point, hey, if we can't race on Monday, well, then guess what? We're packing it all up on Monday. We're rolling out Monday night. And guess what? We're getting paid the big bucks here, millions and millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, that F1 is, you know, as far as a product worldwide. So why not? You've got the logistics to be able to move and all those things that fast. So I agree with you. I think they should have at least tried to roll over the race to Monday and see what they could do. But I think, oh, sorry, my mic fell out, but you can still hear me. I mean, my earpiece fell out, but you can still hear me. But I think the main question was for them was, you know, all these logistics and can we still pull it off? But as a fan, the fans undeniably wanted to see some sort of a race, and that's not what we got at all.
Yeah, no question. It's just, it's frustrating for F1 fans, I'm sure. And you can tell in sports across the board when something like this happens, but they still kind of play. Like, it's almost like when the Broncos didn't have any other quarterbacks last year because of COVID, but they still went out there and played a game on like a Tuesday or Wednesday night. And you're like, this just isn't the product that we paid to come see. So if you're in Belgium and they have this race, the fans who are sitting there are like, either cancel this and postpone it or just cancel it altogether. Why are you trying to half-ass this thing where it's not a race at all? It's not a contested race. That many laps just should not count as a race. So, yeah, I just think F1 needs to – sometimes things like this have to happen for a particular sports or sports leagues or franchises to kind of change a rule. We've seen it a lot in football when like certain plays happen and they go back to and say, can this be reviewed or can we redefine this rule? I do think this will change in F1 because so many racers, team owners, team managers, fans, everybody's not happy about this. So something's going to change. And sometimes it just takes something like this to change these kind of old ways of F1 racing.
Yeah, no, you bring up a great point where, like, once again, we're saying it's an outdated rule. And maybe 30 or 40 years ago, this rule did make sense with, protecting the drivers and the quality of cars and the protection that the drivers even had in the cars as far as technology. So maybe it did make sense to just be playing more along the lines of safety here. And they didn't have it logistically to even be able to roll over to the next day. But I think, like you've brought it up, like I said, in other sports, right, there's the competition committees and they look back to see what can we do better to put out a better product. I think the FIA is definitely going to do this. I believe they've already started to do this, like I said, especially with the team principal being very vocal about it needing to be changed. So I think they will hopefully change it and these rules will be updated if in between seasons, obviously, because we have to still roll with these agreed upon regulations to finish out this 2021 season. But hopefully in between the seasons, we'll see it happen and see the change for 2022. But just quickly before we move on, I've got to bring up how some of the drivers said, that wasn't a race. And in particular, like I said, Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, and Pierre Gasly saying, if I never had an opportunity to overtake somebody or to even get overtaken myself, how was that a race? All we were doing was doing laps under the safety car. And so there was no race there and it shouldn't be classified as one. So, undeniably, they've got to change those rules going forward. But hey, give us a subscribe here, give us a like here, and we'll keep delivering you great F1 content from the States. But let's move on tonight to a great topic. Topic number 8, the high school hustle is kind of what we're calling it, or the big lie. And that's Bishop Sycamore. And that's the story right now across the country. And, even on social media right now, a lot of jokes going around about Bishop Sycamore and the big lie and the big hustle they pulled on ESPN. So what do you got on this, Pat?
This is crazy. I mean, I don't really remember something like this happening before because there's something new every day. Now people are coming out and saying this isn't even a real high school. So it's just so weird. It gets stranger and stranger by the minute. Bishop Sycamore out of Ohio, state of Ohio, played IMG Academy on Saturday, right? I think it was Saturday afternoon. And they lost 58-0. It could have been a lot more, but IMG just like in the second half was like, this is crazy. That were drubbing this team so much. So Bishop Sycamore came in saying to, let me back up. ESPN, when they have these high school football games on ESPN, it's obviously a big deal when ESPN shows up to a high school football game. And they actually go up to a marketing company called Paragon Marketing. And the marketing firm finds the high school football teams that they think will be a good matchup. It's usually two teams from completely different states to get a bigger audience on ESPN because teams from different parts of the country, they think more people will tune in. So they went out, and the IMG, everybody knows, is basically a high school football factory. And then you have Bishop Sycamore, which I don't think any of us have ever heard of before. And they put these two teams together. You think that the teams are going to be even. Bishop Sycamore told this marketing company, we have a substantial amount, we have multiple top recruits in our program, right? Which means we have multiple players that we think are going to go D1, and that usually means, high-level Division I, Power 5 schools, or just outside of that, and they show up, and IMG just trounces them. Like it's like watching, man amongst boys when you see the players from IMG Academy compete against Bishop Sycamore. Come to find out, there weren't any players from Bishop Sycamore on either Rivals.com or any of the other websites or any of the other companies that rank the college football recruits. None of the guys in Bishop Sycamore were on there. So now they're saying, okay, so did the coach lie to us? What happened here? So the coach, Roy Johnson from Bishop Sycamore, actually got fired because he essentially lied to this marketing firm. And even during the broadcast, the two announcers were so confused, like, we didn't, we're hearing that there's multiple top recruits, but we don't know of any of these top recruits on this team. And even they sounded confused, like, what the heck's going on during this broadcast? So now we're hearing that this particular school isn't even listed in the Ohio Department of Education for the upcoming year, that they're not a school that's registered to be a high school in the state of Ohio. So they're not even a charter school, registered as a charter school in that state. So, there's tax dollars or there's certain dollars that go to, schools in every state. They're not registered in Ohio. So now it seems like, did they make up a school, or is this school still becoming a school? And if so, why do you have a football team if you're not registered as a school yet? So there's all these different things where it seemed like this coach, and I'm sure he wasn't alone, but unfortunately he's a scapegoat, or maybe fortunately, because it doesn't sound like he was doing his job either, because he was certainly playing with his kids' safety if this was the case, and these kids weren't, at the level of IMG Academy or anywhere near it. It sounds like they tried to get money or more attention or a combination of both to this school and this program by lying. So there's more people that are going to be involved in this. When you peel back an onion, like everybody says, the layers just keep coming off. There's going to be more layers to this thing. But the worst part about this is, and Brandon, you're a high school football coach. You've coached in college as well. So I'm sure you've got a strong opinion on this. But when the kids' safety is at play, when the kids' safety is now going to be questioned, that's when you got to step back and say, this is high school football, and we are putting our kids' safety in jeopardy. That's the responsibility of the coach when it comes to something like this.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that was the worst part of it. And in particular, they even brought up a play, and I don't know if producer Ben can find it, but the left tackle at IMG is a 5-star recruit, and he's committed to Alabama, and they literally put a 140-pound defensive end out there rushing the passer against this kid. And luckily, he kind of just took it easy on the kid and, didn't beat him up too much because he knew he could easily just defend him. And so it really was like, if he wanted to, he could have easily hurt that kid. And there's some reports coming out that some of these guys weren't even kids, though, that they're like JUCO dropouts, or that they've never played high school football. Some of them are grown men. We're talking in our 20s that should be playing college football right now. So the reports just keep getting more wild by the second here when it comes to this story here with Bishop Sycamore and IMG. And even IMG is coming out with TikTok saying we beat a bunch of grown men 58-0. So it's like they're starting to make jokes about how they're beating grown men and they're outplaying grown men and they're only teenagers, and I don't blame them, and it really was a huge mismatch. And it really was one of these things where I think it was, like you said, it was lied about, all about money and exposure. But, ESPN's got a black eye right now. They're the ones that really got to look at this and say, why didn't we look at the school more and verify all this information before we put them on national television? And then I'm hearing reports that IMG played this school twice, played them last year as well. So if I'm IMG, why am I playing this school twice as well? So if I'm IMG, I've got to look at that too. If those reports are true that IMG played them last year as well. And I'm sure the score was very similar, right? So it's like, why would you want to play them again? And if you had beaten them already like that. So there's a lot of questions coming out. Another big story that came out was the head coach of Bishop Sycamore had an active arrest warrant out for him. And so it's like, man, if you're the police, you might as well just be waiting at the Ohio airport, waiting for this guy to come back from IMG and just scoop him off the airplane if he had an active arrest warrant. But that just shows you how crazy this story was getting, on top of some of the Bishop Sycamore players coming out saying that they had to sleep in hotels and they had to sleep on the ground and they weren't getting fed and there was no education, there was no schooling. So there's a lot of reports saying that it's a fake school and that it's not even listed. And then there's some other reports saying that it's a small school that's trying to build themselves up and that they're an online charter school that's trying to build themselves. First off, when's the last time you heard of an online charter school having a football powerhouse? Never. That is unheard of. That will never happen, okay? IMG is an actual campus in Florida that you can go to, and they have, not only football, but they have a ton of other sports that they have athletes, and they have it's basically a place where they produce athletes for all sports. And there's other schools around the country that do that. SFA is another one of those schools. And I think this Bishop Sycamore is trying to fall into that category, but right now they're just doing all the wrong things. And if anything, they've just failed at this point, and they've got to go back to the drawing board. But it's just a question, are they even real? And that's the question. But I'm telling you, if you're looking for some good entertainment, go on Twitter right now and type in Bishop Sycamore and just scroll through all the memes and the trending topics and all the stories, and you will entertain yourself for at least an hour or two. I'm telling you.
Oh my God, I love that tweet from IMG right there that we'll watch right now. All the guys celebrating that they beat grown men.
Yep.
So many questions to ask here, but my biggest one too is if you're either trying to get away with this or you're trying to build up your program, but you have all these, your coach has an arrest warrant, you've got kids who played in JUCO on your high school. Why are you trying to get on ESPN? Like, you're just putting yourself under the microscope. Like, this is just like, did you just think you were going to get away with this by putting yourself on national television? I just don't understand why you would do that if you knew all this stuff was not, above board. I mean, this is just crazy that this team would even try to do this. So I'm sure we're going to find out a lot more over the next couple of days, months, and next couple of days, weeks, and months with this Bishop Sycamore program. We're going to move on now to topic number 9, huge news in the world of football or soccer. Cristiano Ronaldo signed with Manchester United. He heads back to Manchester United. Brandon, how big is this story and how important is this to soccer, and what is this going to do for the Premier League that Ronaldo's heading back to?
I mean, I think this is huge. I think this is a big one. And I got to, wonder, like, Ronaldo and Messi love competing with each other literally in everything. And I got to think if this is just another move where he was just competing for attention at this point, being like, hey, well, Messi's moving to a new team. Well, I'm going to move to a new team and I'm going to steal his thunder. Because that's exactly what happened here, right? Nobody's talking about PSG anymore. Everybody's talking about this big move of Cristiano Ronaldo, arguably the best soccer player in the world, one of the best soccer players ever, moving back to the Premier League, the best soccer league in the world, with its name being called the Premier League. It rightfully so is the Premier League for professional soccer in the world. He's going back to it. He played there, I believe, in 2000. I believe it was 2001 or 2003 to 2009. So he's going back to a team where he was already a superstar, and he's now going back to Man U, to the Reds. And I just think this is a huge story. You got one of the best players in the world. You got really one of the best teams in the world with their history, right, with all the great players that they've had throughout the years, including Ronaldo or David Beckham, that this is just a huge story, and it continues to grow. But I think it's awesome to have him back in Premier League. And, he had gone on and he was playing for Juventus, which we all know is in the Italian Series A league. And I'll tell you what, Italian Series A is not what it used to be. It is no longer the powerhouse league like it used to be in the early 2000s or during the 90s. And I think Ronaldo had outgrown that league, and he needed to get back to the Premier League where he's playing against the best league, the best players in the world, because he is the best player in the world, arguably, with Messi, like we said. So it's just really one of those things where I think this is huge news. But, just quickly before I hand it off to you, it was funny because, there was some, arguments coming out where rumor has it that he wanted to move on. He wanted to leave Juventus. So Manchester City was one of the first teams to step up and make an offer, right? And they wanted to make an offer to get him. And guess what? All the Manchester United fans were going crazy. They were so mad that he was thinking about signing with Manchester City and that he might go play with them. I even seen a fan burn his old Cristiano Ronaldo Man U jersey, okay? And then 2 days later, it says Manchester City can't pull off the deal, but guess who can pull off the deal? Manchester United, they got the money, they pull off the deal, and they get it done. Boy, does that guy have to feel like an idiot right now burning that jersey. First off, you never burn that jersey. He's one of the greatest players of all time. Doesn't matter if you like what team he's playing for. You keep that jersey for all time. But this guy's an idiot. But I'll tell you what, I loved seeing that. And like I said, this is big news having Cristiano Ronaldo back in the Premier League.
Yeah, it's like the guy that burned the LeBron James Cavaliers jersey, and then he came back after being in Miami, and that guy was like, probably shouldn't have done that. Could wear my jersey again. But yeah, this is cool. Like you said, Man City was trying to sign Ronaldo, especially after they didn't get Harry Kane. Ronaldo was thought to be the one that they were going to go after, and then they pulled the deal. So apparently, I'm not sure what the reasoning is for that for Man City to do that. So then, obviously, Manchester United was pumped to see Ronaldo come back. I think Ronaldo also wants to come back to Manchester United. Like you mentioned, he was there first in 2003. They won 3 Premier League titles and a Champions League title there when Ronaldo was there. I believe he won the golden foot or the golden boot? Excuse me. He won that a couple times, I think, when he was with Manchester United. So he certainly, is special to him. I was reading some quotes that he had once he signed with them and how important it was to be with Manchester United and how much he was looking forward to go back there and that sort of thing. So, I think this is great for the Premier League too, because they had that whole issue with wanting to create this like super league with all the top teams in the Premier League, and then there was so much backlash from the fans from that. But now that you have this movement with these great players moving, either to a different team in the Premier League or Ronaldo coming back to the Premier League, that's going to create more positive interest in the Premier League. Not that they need more fans; they have awesome fans, rabid fans. But I just think this helps their image a little bit to get Ronaldo back in there, and obviously he's going to get a decent paycheck too. But probably the most recognizable soccer player in the world. He just had 2 goals last night in a World Cup qualifier against Ireland, where he became the top international goal scorer of all time. So Ronaldo's stock is as high as it's ever been, I think. 36 years old, I believe. So he's starting to get up there, and you wonder if this is sort of like him planning out what he's going to do for the rest of his career. At this point, he's 36. Who knows how much longer he's going to play, but maybe he wants to finish out with Manchester United on his way out the door. Because remember, in 2003, he started there when he was 18. Now he's 36. He's thinking maybe of bookending his career with Manchester United.
Yeah, man, I love Ronaldo. I mean, he's got the superstar looks. He's got the superstar play. I personally think he's the number 1 player in the world. Obviously Messi's got the skill up with him, but I don't think Messi has the brand power and the marketing power to match up with Ronaldo, in my opinion. And like I said, this is an opinionated sports show, so that is my opinion. But I've got to go with Ronaldo on that one. I love Ronaldo, and I'm excited to see him back in the red uniform and playing for Manchester United. I think this is going to be great for Premier League, great for Manchester, the city, and great for Manchester United, the football club. So I think Ronaldo's the man. But just quickly going back to, Producer Ben had just brought it up when he was at the Euros and just how much power Ronaldo has. He sat down on that interview. Producer Ben, I don't know if you can bring it up when he sat down at that Euro interview again. He sat down at that interview. He moved the 2 bottles of Coca-Cola and said agua and lifted the bottle of water, meaning I'd rather drink water than Coca-Cola. Over that next week, Coca-Cola lost 20% in their stock value, just because Ronaldo moved those 2 bottles of Coke to the end of the table and said he'd rather drink water. So that's just how powerful and how much, brand power this guy carries, and how much brand power he carries around the world and globally, and how many super fans there are out for this guy. And he deserves it, man. Like I said, one of the greatest players of all time, one of the greatest looking players of all time. He's got the superstar looks. Why would you not want to have him branding? Coca-Cola was like, oh my God, what happened? The greatest player of all time just basically sunk our stock by 20%. But hey, that's your fault, man. Yeah, I mean, you gotta maybe put a water product up there for him. But yeah, I don't know. I just think this is big news for the Premier League and for Manchester U and for the city of Manchester for sure. But hey, let's move on to our final topic of the night. It's a big one, man, and it's one that I think we've talked about on this show, things that I've never seen before, things you've never seen before. I have personally never seen a Division, one Power 5 school talking about starting a grad assistant, an assistant coach, week 1, and that's exactly what the South Carolina Gamecocks are looking to do.
Yeah. Now we'll kind of make sure that everybody has the details here. Zeb Noland is the guy's name, and even though he's a grad assistant this year, he's 24 years old. He actually was at North Dakota State last year, or in the past. He was backing up Trey Lance at North Dakota State. So he was playing college football months ago. It wasn't like he's been out of college football for 5 years, something like that. But it's still crazy to think that this guy was, becoming a grad assistant, trying to learn how to be a coach, and then all of a sudden they're like,
Yep.
You got eligibility left. We just lost our starting quarterback. You want to jump back in there and go under center? You know the playbook because you're an assistant coach. I mean, it's almost like these college football coaches are becoming more open-minded and getting more creative, and this kid was the best option for them, this grad assistant. So very interesting that they're putting him in there. We'll see how he does, as a starter for South Carolina because, even though he wasn't playing that long ago, it's tough to jump right back in there. And he wasn't starting for North Dakota State. He was sitting behind Trey Lance, who was the 3rd pick in the draft, and everybody thinks he's going to be an unbelievable quarterback in the NFL. We'll see how he does. We'll see how rusty he is, that sort of thing. The guy's going to get more attention than he's ever had in his life. They were interviewing him this week, and he's kind of this Southern guy from North Carolina who was talking about his name and all these different things and seemed very humble. So it seems pretty cool if this guy's going to get a shot. And grad assistants like this, they're certainly not playing in the NFL. They probably weren't great players in college. So to get a chance like this to start for South Carolina, an SEC team, is pretty special for this kid. I think this is probably going to be the biggest game of his life coming up.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this is a big moment for him, like you said, having played at a team like North Dakota State and then coming to play for a Power 5 school in South Carolina in the SEC. I think this is a moment that he's looking forward to and definitely one that he couldn't pass up. So it's a big story because he was transferring he was a grad assistant. He was trying to transfer out of the playing career and into the coaching career, which, we've all done. I've done that myself. And you kind of just go on and you continue to coach. You generally don't get an option to get back to playing or to have an opportunity like this. But I think this is one of those things where I think any guy that steps away from the game and becomes a coach, if you got the opportunity, you say, heck yeah, man, let me suit it back up and see what I've got, especially for an opportunity for a big school like this in South Carolina and an SEC school and a Power 5 school. So I think this is, an opportunity that no doubt he couldn't pass up. But it's a big story because, like you said, he was transferring his career from going to being a player to a coach and looking to be a coach. And now, hey, you're not a coach anymore. You're going back to being a player. And guess what? You're starting week 1 too. So it's big news. I will say South Carolina is playing a low-tier school week 1. So a lot of people are saying no matter who they start at quarterback, they're going to get the dub. And I do believe that, but I still think it's one of those things where we got to see what he does. And I want to see what type of position the coaching staff puts him in because he hasn't had, much time under center. Sure, I'm sure he knows the playbook, and obviously he was on the staff, so he knows what he's talking about. He's played the game before. So I just really want to see if they're going to tailor the playbook more to what he can do in this first game to give them more of an opportunity to win, but also more of an opportunity for him to shine and show his capabilities, I should say. But this is definitely a big news. And a lot of people even bringing it up on Twitter, being like the movie Unnecessary Roughness. I don't know if you guys remember that, but the movie, it was like a small North Texas college, and the guy was like a grad school guy. He was like 30 something. He comes in and then he plays football for them, and it becomes a big story. So if you've never seen that movie, Unnecessary Roughness, go back and watch that because that's a great movie. But it's producer Ben's pulling up all these things. A lot of memes have been popping up on Twitter about this guy being old. But like you said, he's not even that old. He's like 24 years old. He's still got eligibility. He's still ready to play. Now, I think he's ready for this big opportunity. But I think the memes are going to get better as game time approaches.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we, don't count out the fact that this small school can be – I'm not even sure who South Carolina is playing this week. But don't count out that this small school can't beat South Carolina. I think yesterday was the anniversary of Appalachian State beating Michigan first week of the season. A lot of these powerhouse, these Power 5 conference teams play a smaller school team in that first week to kind of get their legs underneath them before they get into conference play or even interconference play. And Appalachian State took down Michigan. So, yeah, there you go right there. I've definitely seen that movie. That was great.
Classic.
So, yeah, I mean, good for Zeb Nolan. This is going to be, like I said, a big opportunity for him. It's going to be the biggest crowd he's probably ever played in front of. So I hope he does well. We'll certainly be rooting for him. That is going to do it for our 10 sports topics this week, folks. Real quick, again, if you like what you see, you want to watch more of our content, make sure you go to our YouTube channel, Comeback Sports on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. All the content that we've got going on is going to filter right to your feed. Our producer, Ben Kudo, who does fantastic things behind the scenes, cuts up all the different segments. He'll put it on there. It'll filter right to your subscriptions. Then you can just watch it really easily. You don't have to search for it. It's right there as soon as you open up YouTube. And make sure you also follow us on Twitter at our Twitter handles, which are at the bottom of the screen. Before we sign off, Brandon, we wanted to give this guy a shout out. Malcolm Butler, crazy as it sounds, just retired from the NFL over the past 24 hours. Certainly the hero of the Super Bowl when the Pats beat the Seahawks. He's had a really good career for a guy who was an undrafted free agent and has one of the biggest moments in Super Bowl history. I wish he actually could have played a little bit longer. I wish he played against the Eagles in the Super Bowl. We won't get into that right now because the Pats would have one more ring. But fantastic career for Malcolm Butler. I wish he could have stuck around, but I hope he's happy with the fact that he's retiring this week.
Yeah, no, my hat's off to Malcolm Butler. He's obviously got one of the biggest Super Bowl moments ever that people will never forget ever, especially Patriots fans. But he just came off a great year last year too, with 4 interceptions and 100 tackles, which is his career high in tackles. So he can still clearly do it, but he's just deciding to hang it up early, and I don't blame him. But ton of respect for a guy coming out of a small school and making big plays on the big stage and, making a big name for himself. So Malcolm Butler, we love you. We respect you. We appreciate what you did here in New England. Cheers to you on your next chapter in life. But I've also got to quickly say, a guy that's retiring, I mentioned it earlier, and undeniably, I'm going to have to pick as a segment that we're going to have to do on him is Kimi Räikkönen retiring from F1 at the end of the year. So same for Kimi Räikkönen. We love you, man. You've been great for F1, and I've enjoyed watching you, especially your interviews. He's amazing to watch in his interviews and the moments he's had in F1. So we'll definitely be covering him more on the show as well as this F1 season winds down. But yeah, we're losing some greats in the sports world.
No question. Räikkönen will be counting down the last races of his career as this season winds down. We've still got several races left, so it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Folks, thanks again for joining us here on Comeback Sports. We'll see you next time. Have a good week, everybody.